Thank you, Ronnie. Do want to congratulate Ronnie on her trip to Washington. I hope you accomplished all your goals, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing. How's everyone doing this morning? Doing okay? As Ronnie said, I love leather jackets. Usually I am found in some sort of admittedly high-end leather jacket, but as she said, the heat, the humidity is just too much today. So I tried to wear something equally as enlightening. I call this my stealth jacket. I walk into a room, nobody knows I'm there. Now, one of the reasons why I like coming to Go Network is it reminds me of my own career transition. I was laid off back in 1996, and everybody wanted to give me advice. Everybody wanted to tell me what to do. The problem was, nobody helped me to do it. Nobody showed me what to do. Everyone told me, nobody showed me. Does that happen to anybody in here? Yeah, everyone has good advice, but not everybody has actionable work that you can do to increase your chances of finding a job. That's why I'm here today. I'm a reference librarian at the St. Louis County Library, and what I'm going to do today is show you some resources from the St. Louis County Library that you can use to compile lists of companies within certain industries, certain geographic areas, learn about those companies, learn some of the people who work at those companies, some of the company officers, and then learn a lot more about the industries that you may want to go into. Now, I want this to be an interactive presentation. I like to talk. I like to hear you guys talk. So at any time, go ahead and raise your hand. Ronnie will come by and take your question, and I will try to answer it. And again, if I can't answer your question, I will make up something that sounds good. Let's get started. I'm on the St. Louis County Library's website. The address is www.slcl.org, and I'm going to click on Research. And then I'm going to click on Business and Investing. Now, I realize I'm going to throw a lot of information at you today. You will not remember it all. It took me years to remember it all. So don't walk out of here thinking, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to use every one of these databases, and it's just going to happen like magic. You're going to make mistakes. I mean, using different databases is sort of like borrowing your friend's car. Once you learn one database, it's kind of like your car. But you borrow your friend's car, it's pretty much the same. The steering wheel is still on the left side of the car, unless you borrowed your British friend's car. But the dashboard's a little different. The knobs and switches are a little different. That's how databases are. Once you learn how to use one or two databases, that'll make it easier to learn other databases. But don't expect, just from a demonstration, that you're going to be able to sit down and automatically know how to use these databases. That's why Ronnie alluded to what we call our Book a Librarian program. That's where you can call up the St. Louis County Library. I've got my business cards here, give you the address, or give you the phone number for that. Give us a call, book a librarian, come out, sit down with one of us, and we'll show you how to use these databases for your searches. And that's the advantage, is we can't use everybody's searches in this demonstration, but if you sit down with us, we'll take it step by step using your industries, your needs. So I'm going to click on Business and Investing. And we see a big list of databases. Many of these we'll look at today, some we won't. First one we're going to look at is called ReferenceUSA. You'll notice Home Access and Library Access, so I'm going to click on Home Access. So I have to log in. Hey, it worked. All right, so here is our list of databases right here. We've got 3 of them. We've got U.S. businesses, which is where we'll be working. We've got new businesses, which if you'd like to work for newer businesses in the areas where you'd want to go. And then we've got U.S. standard white pages, which is very similar to switchboard.com, yellowpages.com, or whitepages.com, anywho, all of those. I'm going to click on U.S. businesses. Now, you see 2 tabs up here toward the top. First one is Quick Search. This is when you know the name of the company that you want to search for. You can type it in right here. Word of advice, don't type in a city, because ReferenceUSA has a hard time with St. Louis municipalities, much like St. Louis residents have trouble with St. Louis municipalities sometimes. So don't even worry about a city. If you need to use a state, choose your state, but forget about the city. So we're not going to really worry about this today because it's pretty well paint by numbers. What I want to show you, though, is custom search. Here's where the fun begins. This is how we create lists of companies based on criteria that you choose. Now let me give you the first rule of thumb with ReferenceUSA. Whenever you see expand all, always click it. So I'm going to do that. And for those of you who haven't picked up the handouts yet, much of what I'm telling you is already in the handouts, but the bad jokes, those didn't translate too well. So we've got over here on the left side all of our criteria. I know it looks intimidating, it looks confusing, but most of this we are not going to use, which is good because I don't want to have to explain everything here. So, first of all, we need to choose a business type. This is the industry that we're looking for. I'm going to choose keyword sick nakes. Anybody know what sick and nakes stands for? If you don't, oh, excellent. Some person does. SICK is just Standard Industrial Classification. NAICS is North American Industrial Classification System. If you don't know that, don't worry about it. We're not going to use it today, and I normally don't use it either. I prefer using keyword. Right here in the box is our keyword search box. So now what we need is an industry. So somebody give me an industry. Everybody, please don't raise your hands at once. Transportation, all right. You may not be able to see it, but yeah, there's a little circle, and what it's doing is it's giving us some possibilities for transportation. So I'm going to choose this first one right here, transportation. And does anybody see any of these other matches that you like? Okay. There we are. And you'll notice as we choose them, they appear down here in the selected box. And it's sort of like Google. The farther you go down the page, the less relevant it normally becomes. But does anybody else see anything in here that looks promising? Children's transportation service, is that like a bicycle or a tricycle or a wagon, like a Red Ryder? I don't know. This one right here, federal government transportation programs. Here we go. Okay, that's probably enough. So we've got our business type. Now we need to choose our geography. Let me scroll this down here a bit to make it easier to see. Now we need to tell the computer, where are these companies? So, geography, again, brings me to another one of my rules of thumb. Rules of thumb number 2, I guess 2 thumbs up. That means only choose one of these. Reason why is if you choose more than one, it's going to default to whatever the larger entity is. So, rather than choosing city and state, we need something a little more, I guess, inclusive. I'm going to choose MSA. otherwise known as metro area. So what it does is, you see at the very bottom, it asks, okay, where is the state where this MSA appears? So I go state, I scroll down to Missouri, and now it gives me a list of every metropolitan area in the state of Missouri. Some of these, I wonder how they get included within a metro area list, but here's St. Louis, Missouri, Illinois, and you'll notice they are including the Illinois counties as well. So now we've chosen our two most important aspects. We've got our industry type, and we've got our location. Now, there are a few other little things over here on the left side. We're not going to look at them now, but we've got things like public-private company. Maybe you only want to work for privately held companies. Maybe you want to work for public companies. Also, headquarters and branch. That's a good thing to select because it'll let you select headquarters. If you're searching for banks, for instance, you're going to get a whole lot of branches of banks. So if you're applying to work at the bank, likely you're going to be applying to the headquarters because that's where the HR is going to be. So headquarters branch, if you're finding a huge list of companies and you're getting a lot of branches, that might be one way to remove that. But right now we've got a pretty simple list. I like to do simple lists. I like to do broad searches on my first search because if you're too narrow on your first search, you never know what you've lost. Make sense? Okay, so let's go over here to the right and click View Results, and I have no idea what's going to happen. 489, well, maybe I do. So here's 489 results. A couple things to show you. First of all, you notice all the Illinois companies appear first. Anyone know why? Exactly. I comes before M in the alphabet. I learned that in 6th grade. Well, I mean, I was an advanced student, so. Now, over here on the right side, it says record type. And you should see a little V. That's not the V for victory. That's the V for verified. And my question is, if it's in the database, shouldn't it already be verified? So I don't like that. I'm going to show you something better. Right next to record type, I'm going to choose corporate tree. Now, what this does is, this lets us know where this particular company is on the company's corporate structure. So you notice there's a few of those down here that have an arrow up. That means that there's at least one level above this company on the corporate structure. Might be useful to kind of follow those arrows upward to see where you go, see who owns whom. So does anybody see any of these that look interesting to them, or would you rather fast forward a bit and find a Missouri company? Yeah, let's fast forward a bit. Okay. Now we're on page 1 of 20. We see that down here at the very bottom. And there are 25 results per page. So I'm just going to, let's see, go in here and we'll try page 7. Okay, now we're a little more into some St. Louis companies. That BNSF is all over the place. So does anyone see any of these companies that look interesting you'd like to have a look at? Okay. Paul, I think we should look at Americold Logistics. Thank you. So I click on them, and again, remember what I said about expand all. What do? Click on it. So I'm going to click on expand all, and you may not notice much, but ReferenceUSA sometimes hides things. They think it improves navigation. I disagree. So we've got up here at the top, we've got our basic information about the company. Our contact info, phone number, address, no toll-free number. And then we've got our job listings. Maybe you find something here, maybe you don't, but if you've been around Go Network long enough, you probably know that the jobs that you're looking for are likely not advertised. You're going to be going for the jobs that aren't posted yet, the ones that insiders know about, and the ones that you get through networking rather than going through a database. But that doesn't mean that these job listings aren't useful. If nothing else, it might give you some ideas. It might show you how the company writes a job description, if nothing else. So it might prove useful for you. But likely, these aren't the jobs you're going to be targeting. So let's scroll down a little bit more, and then we've got our industry profile. Here's where things start to get a little interesting, because remember those SIC codes that we talked about before that one person knows about? Here they are. This tells us, under industry profile, what the company does. Now, the only reason why I ever mention SIC codes, well, two reasons. First of all, everyone usually asks me. It's usually the talkative kid in class. He's, what's an SIC code? What's an NAICS code? But I also like to show you because there's a technique I call reverse engineering. Sometimes when people come to me, they're not really sure what industry they want to go into, which makes it tough because we're searching based on industry. So what I'll do is I'll say, is there a target company that you know about which fits the type of company you want to search for? That's where you want to go. And so they'll say, okay, yeah, worldwide technology. That's the type of company I'd like to work for. Okay. So we do a quick search. Remember that quick search that we saw a little earlier? We do a quick search, and we see the industry profile. We look at the SIC codes. We look at the descriptions, and we search for companies based on that. So you may not know the industry, but if you can find some companies that are similar, we can get a list of those companies, and then you can use that list to target potential employers. Like that list we saw, you can take those one by one, write down your information, find some potential companies. So let's scroll down a little farther. Now, business profiles. Usually, you don't get those when you're looking at a branch of a company. You get them from headquarters. And also, you normally do not get them if you're looking for a small company. But for major companies, both public and private, that do a lot of business, have a lot of people, you normally get a short business profile. A little farther down, we've got our location map. If you're not sure where this is, this location map can be very useful. It's a Google map. Then we've got our business demographics. So it tells us location employees, 20 to 49, parent company, might be useful. That might be where you end up having to apply if you're applying to this company. Let's say years in database 2, credit rating score B+. I'll just ask you a question. If they're trying to sell you something, what do you think about that? If they're trying to sell you a piece of information, how much do you value the free information? Location sales volume, 4 million. Location, so we know it's a branch. Last updated May of 2013. Well, pretty recent. And let's scroll down a little farther. We've got our management directory, only one person. If we were looking at the headquarters, likely we'd have more. But at least we have somebody, and he's listed as a manager. That's nice. Company news, don't always get that. Business expenditures, this is a wild guess based on similar companies that do similar type of work and of similar size. These are historical data, UCC filings, nearby businesses, but down here at the bottom, competitors report. Other companies that do similar business. Questions about ReferenceUSA? Any comments? What do you think about it? Right. Excellent. Yes, sir.
What if you're not a county resident? What if you're not a county resident? Can you get access to this, and can you access it from a home computer?
Okay, two good questions. I'll answer the second question first. All the databases, save one, and that's going to be the one we're going to look at next, you can access from home with a valid St. Louis County Library card, meaning one that has not expired. Answer your first question, might be better to throw a question at you. Where do you live? Franklin, yes. We've got a list of companies that are basically a list of counties that are close by, some Illinois counties. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring the list with me, but call the library if you're interested in getting one of our library cards. There's what's called a reciprocal agreement. We have that with St. Louis City. We have that with the Municipal Library Consortium, which is Brentwood, Maryland Heights, U-City, those areas, Kirkwood. And then we have a reciprocal also with St. Charles. Richmond Heights, if you live in Richmond Heights, you can get one of our cards for free. It's going to be where you live, though, not where what library card you have. Yes, Ronnie.
Can you renew your St. Louis library card if it's expired over the phone, or do you have to go into a library?
You will have to go into a library.
Okay.
Now, any areas that I didn't mention, like Franklin County, you'd be eligible to get a card, but you'd have to pay $50 to get the card. And same with some of the surrounding Illinois counties. Calhoun is one of them that I know some of the others.
Do you know if the libraries in those counties have this type of system? Sorry. Do you want me to say it again?
She's asking whether some of the Illinois counties, whether the surrounding counties, do they have ReferenceUSA? I can't say for sure, but my best guess is no, because this is one of our more expensive databases. This is a database that is primarily used by small business owners to develop contact lists and do market research. I just like to use it for career transition.
What are the possibilities of printing lists while you're in the library?
Good question. From home, you can create an Excel spreadsheet. I won't go into the full, because it's a fairly involved process, but that's something that I can show you one-on-one. But let me get back to the list here. What we do is we would select 25. You can do 25 companies, basically one page from home, but it's 4 pages or 100 companies from the library. And it doesn't have to be headquarters. It can be from any St. Louis County library. And what you do is you would select them all right here and then go to download. And what this is going to do is allow you to download that sheet and even more information into an Excel spreadsheet. So you can effectively create your own database. More questions about ReferenceUSA? I'll show you. So we start off with St. Louis County Library's homepage. So it's slcl.org right here. And then we click on Research. And then next step is Business and Investing. And then scroll down and choose ReferenceUSA Home Access. That's why we have Home Access and Library Access, because at the library you have access to be able to download more companies, 100 as opposed to 25, but the content of the database is still the same. Okay, you guys ready for a new database? All right, so I'm going to go back to our Business and Investing page, and I'm going to scroll down and click on Sorkins Online. Ah, look at this. We are forbidden, but fear not, because the nice people at Sorkins were decent enough to give me my own password. Let's see if it works. Cross your fingers. I think it worked. Okay. Excuse me? It is anti-disestablishmentarianism. Okay, we're logged into Sorkins, and again, you have to be at the library to use this, but Sorkins is a different type of database. Now, it accomplishes the same task, meaning creating a list of companies based on criteria and location, but it goes about it a different way. Sorkins' interface is very different, and Sorkins' content is also very different. And I'm going to show you how to do a search first, and we'll talk a little bit about how Sorkins and ReferenceUSA are different. But one thing I like to encourage you to do is find a database that you like. Find your favorite, but make sure you know how to use the other databases, because I encourage people to use these databases in concert, because each of them provides some aspect that will be important to you. So using them together, combining the information that you get from ReferenceUSA with Sorkins, with Million Dollar Database, with Hoovers, with First Research, combining that all together is going to make you much more effective when you sit down for an interview. So Sorkins, interface a little different. What I'm going to do is, upper left corner, I'm going to click on combination. The reason why I choose that is combination is going to give you the most amount of criteria on one page at a time. Also, it somewhat reflects the ReferenceUSA interface. Not completely, but it's at least similar. So with Sorkins, first thing we see is our region, St. Louis, Mid-Missouri, Kansas City, Wichita, Mid-Illinois, and Chicago. So here's your first idea of how these two databases are different. ReferenceUSA is nationwide. Sorkins is primarily St. Louis, Kansas City, and Chicago, with some of those middle areas in between. Sorkins is a St. Louis-based company, so the information they have on St. Louis is very good. I don't live in Chicago or Kansas City, but those I've talked to are happy with the Chicago and KC info. So we've got our region already selected. Location, we're not so much worried about that. Now, we could use a company, type in a company search right there, or a keyword search, but I'd rather search by major industry. So somebody give me an industry. Banking. Excuse me? Banking. Banking, all right. So banking, probably under financial services. Okay. Looks like we've got different types of banks. So tell me which of these work for you.
Let's go with banks, central banks.
Let's see.
It's the third one in front of that.
The problem is I'm not as sharp as Alex Trebek. And the others? Okay, then we'll click Continue. So you notice we now have central banks under major industry. And I'm going to show you a few other things down here, but we're not going to use these in our search just yet. First thing is personnel function. This is great because you may want to only see companies that designate somebody with, for instance, sales. That might be your thing. You want to contact the salespeople rather than the HR people. Or you may want to contact the HR people. Or you may want to contact the board members directly. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to hear from you. But I don't recommend using this in a first search for the same reasons I illustrated with ReferenceUSA, in that it narrows your search down pretty much, because if a company doesn't designate somebody in a sales role, you won't find them. And that'll eliminate those companies. So I'd recommend strongly using this, maybe to narrow down your initial search if it's too broad, if there are too many companies. Again, personnel hierarchy, you can only search for presidents, chairmen, CEOs, Or title of responsibility, if you only want to find people in, say, business development. That might be one way to do it. Or title of responsibility, lying around and doing nothing. If you want to contact the people who do that in a company, there are people like that in every company, this would be the way to do it. I'd be a little concerned about a company that designates somebody for that role. Then we've got sales and employees. You may only want to work for the larger companies, or you may want to work for smaller companies. Same thing with employees. You can say how large or small companies you want to work for, but another word of advice on Sorkins, don't choose both of them. Choose either sales or employees, because you'll narrow things down too quickly if you try to choose them both. And then you've got your ownership, public, private, just like you saw before, and then year founded. Maybe you only want to work for new companies, or maybe you want to work for older companies. So let's have a look. Let's click on search, and just like before, I have no idea what's going to be found, only 2. Now, Sorkins' interface is, like I said, a little different. I try to click here, and I get nothing. What you have to do is you have to click Check All, and then click View Profiles. Don't even worry about the mini profiles. Take the full profiles. Okay, Fifth Third Bank. Let's see what Sorkins has to say about this company. We have revenue, 80 employees. I'm assuming that's the headquarters. We've got our branches. We see our industry codes, tells us what they do. And then we get our executive list. Now, this is probably not a fair comparison to ReferenceUSA because we were looking at a branch rather than a headquarters, but have a look at the information that we're getting here. And so we see the market president is Thomas G. Welch. Let's see what we can learn about old Thomas here. Let's click on Thomas's name, and so he's on the executive advisory board of the John Cook School of Business, Board of Directors, St. Louis Zoo. Now, this can be useful if you happen to be interviewing with him, knowing a little bit about him, what are his interests. Maybe you share some interests that you can use to communicate with him. So I'm going to click back, and then I'm going to show you something else to the side. You are correct. Thank you. So I'm going to click on the envelope. I guess I'll allow that. Okay, well, basically what this would do is give you Mr. Cook's email address. And that's something we get a lot is, how do we get email addresses for these people? Maybe I can just rest it there and it'll show it. Yeah, there you are. Do I know this is his email address? I'm a little hesitant to say yes, but maybe, 53.com, yeah. I mean, it looked a little suspicious to me at first. Maybe I'm just a suspicious kind of guy. But yeah, that might be him. So we've got, look at all these people. We've got vice presidents, branch managers, co-branch, HR business partner. So that's the level of information that you get from Sorkins. Yes, sir.
Wait for the mic. That initial list had 2 banks on it.
Yes.
Seems like a small list for banks and central banks in the St. Louis area. Don't know if you have any idea why it's so small.
Likely because we only chose one. We only chose central banks. If we open it up a bit to choose maybe some more of those industry in finance, we might be able to find a few others. Usually, whenever you're not getting as many companies as you expect to find, expand your search, broaden your search, add more search criteria. Usually that will help you find more companies. But also, the opposite is true. If you are inundated with companies, if you have 100 companies or 1,000 companies, and you don't want 1,000 companies, then do the opposite. Reduce the criteria, reduce the types of companies that you're finding, or other ways to narrow your search down would be to look at your sales and your employees, choose a few there. Also, have a look at your personnel function. Maybe you only want to look for companies that have a certain title in them. But that's a good question, is sometimes your searches don't pan out. Sometimes they don't look like what you think they ought to. That's part of research. So it's just a matter of adjusting your search, adding, subtracting, monkeying with your list. And if you sit down with one of us, we'll give you more details on how to do that.
Can you do me a favor? Can you go back into your search engine and for banking, could you put in our CRA and see what happens?
Let's see. Okay, you mentioned CRA. I'm not familiar with what that is. Is that the name of a bank or a type of bank?
No, it's a specialized department within a bank. Community Reinvestment Act. Community Reinvestment Lending.
Let's try that as a keyword. We'll try community reinvestment, and let's see what that does. Something tells me this is not what you were looking for. This may not be the ace in your hole. I was just sitting there. I had to take that one. Yes, sir.
How do companies get on the list? Do they have to register, or is it is Sorkins get everybody that's available, or how does it work?
Sorkins is very open. If you have a company and you're doing some sort of business, maybe a small business, maybe a single practitioner, maybe a partnership, give them a call, contact us and talk to them, and very likely they will put you in here. ReferenceUSA is the same way. They handle everything from the Fortune 500, the biggest of the big, to the smallest of the small. You just give them a call and maybe they'll put you in. Yes, Ronnie?
You were lucky enough to get a password.
Yes.
How do we get a password? Is that something we can get?
Well, there are two options there. There's the hard way and the expensive way, which is to call Sorkins up and say, I'd love to have a password. How many thousands of dollars would that cost me? I wouldn't recommend that way. But the easy way is to go to your St. Louis County Library and log on to one of our computers, or if you have a laptop that's Wi-Fi enabled, connect to our network, because if you bring a laptop into our libraries, it will think of you as one of our networked computers. So you'll be able to use Sorkins, you'll be able to download 100 companies at a time from ReferenceUSA. So that's the easy way and the cheap way. A little less convenient, but.
St. Louis City, the 18 here in the city? Are you familiar with your competitors?
Is Sorkins in the city? I don't know. I hope so, but I'm not sure. But if you're a city resident, you can get one of our cards for free. Any other questions about Sorkins?
Do you have to hear the search, or can you just not click anything? Are you going to get like 20,000 names or something, or what?
Didn't hear the question. Can you one more time? Okay.
So you left it open.
All right. Let's try. Let's come back here. And then we'll go financial services. Now, what you have to do here, if you wanted everything connected with banking. We could do check all here, which gives us everything from financial services, and then continue. And then search, and let's have a look. 1,093. And then what you do is you click check all, and then view profiles, and then you wait a little while, and you'll have a nice long list. And that brings me to the big disadvantage of Sorkins. We don't have a way to download this. We don't have a way to download the companies that you get from Sorkins. So you could jot them down, you could use other techniques, shall we say, to take the list. Any other questions about Sorkins? Okay. Would you guys prefer a break or another database? Ooh. It's pretty. Ronnie, you'll be the deciding judge.
Let's do another 15 or 20 minutes and then we'll take a break. I'm sorry if I just went against half the room, but let's do another database.
Okay. And those of you who are asleep, I'll know how you voted. So we're back on the databases page. The next one I'm going to show you is a very similar database to ReferenceUSA and Sorkins. This is one called $1 Million Database. So I'm going to scroll down here and choose $1 Million Database. And you notice D&B, that stands for Dun & Bradstreet. Are there those of you who are familiar with Dun & Bradstreet, the financial data that they provide? So those of you who are familiar with them probably know their reputation in the financial industry, so you can trust their data. So I'm going to click on Continue. Now, one thing I probably should have said is if you're doing this at home, when you click on the name of the database, you're not going to go directly there like I am, because I'm already logged in for each of these databases. But you will get that same box that I got, last name, card number, PIN number. So this is kind of similar to ReferenceUSA in that we've got our basic search. We could search for a company, but I'm going to show you advanced search. Now, as high as I am on this database, as much as I love this database, it does have one big problem. It has a cumbersome interface. And not everybody gets it from this demonstration. That's one of the reasons why I don't show this database as much as I do some of the others. But I do want to let you guys know it is available, and especially if you want to learn this database and learn it well, because this is a good database to learn, give us a call, talk to one of us. We will schedule an appointment with you. So let's have a look on the left side and have a gander, and okay, here's our choices. Let's click on location. This is going to tell the computer where these companies will be. So I've got the select criteria box. I'm going to choose MSA for the metro area. And then I'm going to click add. That's a big mistake a lot of people make with $1 Million databases. They forget to click add. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I've got to hum through this big long list of MSAs. Fortunately, I have some understanding of where this is going to be. And I click St. Louis, Missouri, Illinois, and then add to criteria. Again, people sometimes forget that. I also want to show you down here, it actually looks better on this screen than on mine. That's terrific. We have our yellow cheat sheet. The more complicated your searches become, the more valuable this is, because this lets you know what search criteria you have selected. Also lets you remove them very easily from here. So we've got our location. Now we need to choose our industry. So similar to ReferenceUSA, I'm going to go back to select criteria, Here's our SIC codes and our NAICS codes. I'm going to click line of business and then click add. This will let us basically tell $1 Million Database what type of companies we want to find. So what type of companies do we want to find? Biotechnology. Obviously, I misspelled something. Okay. That's what I like, because I don't have to know how to spell too well. I can just spell the first few and get some suggestions. So, which one of these do you prefer? Do you like them both? Commercial. Okay. So we'll go commercial. And then add to criteria. And ReferenceUSA is the only database, or I'm sorry, $1 Million Database is the only database that gives you a omit. So, for instance, if you're doing a fairly broad search and you're getting a lot of companies of a certain type, meaning you're getting banks, but you're getting, I don't know, mortgage banks, and you don't want those, you can omit, select a criteria, and omit the mortgage banks. I know a lot of people out there who own homes would like to omit the mortgage banks. But anyway, let's see if that worked. Okay, so now we have biotechnological research. So let's have a look at some of these other criteria here. Size. Pretty much what you'd expect, but even though I'm not going to choose anything right now, I do want to show you something on sales. What's cool about sales is, do you remember with ReferenceUSA and Sorkins, they gave you some specified ranges that you had to choose? Well, in $1 Million Database, you have a lot more flexibility. Now, I know that I talk about the cumbersome nature of this database and of this interface, but with the cumbersome nature, you also get flexibility. This is a good example of that. I've had people who are very, very precise about the types of companies they wanted to find. This is a good way to do that. If precision is what you want, $1 Million Database is your database. But I'm not going to use any of those. Contact info. Job function, job title, executive name. This is the type of thing that we saw with Sorkins. And ReferenceUSA can do this also. Guys ready to do a search? All right, so I click Run Search. 1,330. How do I know that? Well, up there in the upper right, it says all 1,330. Oy. I'm not sure if I really want to go through all that, especially because we're seeing a lot of these employee count 1. I'm kind of curious. Let's see what VIA Systems is doing. 98,000, so they're pretty small. So pretty similar to what we saw from ReferenceUSA in terms of information so far. I'm a little disappointed at this. Executive details is nobody. Surely somebody answered the phone. There's only one of them. Industry details. Okay, this shows us what that one person does. Must be pretty busy if they're doing all this type of work. And then family tree. Yeah, well, I pretty well know where this tree leads. Okay, so we've got that information. As Bill Murray might say, we got that going for us. Oh, let's get back here. So, I'm going to show you another advantage of $1 Million Database. Remember, with Sorkins, you had no downloads. With ReferenceUSA, you had up to 100 at a library location. Well, $1 Million Database used to be unlimited. Those are the good years. Now they're only about 3,000. So we can choose all and then click Build Files. And then we have a choice. We have two tabs. We have table, so this creates an Excel spreadsheet. And then we have reports, which creates PDFs. Now, I'm going to choose all fields, build files, and give you an idea of what you get from $1 Million Database. We have two options down here. We can click here to download your file, which is what I'm going to do, but you can also email this file directly to yourself. So I'm going to click here to download my file. I do. View downloads. Now, of course, I have no idea how long this is going to take, but there we are. So here is a list of 1,330 companies. Now, are there any really strong Excel people in here? Anyone who really knows Excel well? Because, frankly, I'm very poor at Excel. But I do know that people who are smart with Excel and smart with other Microsoft products could theoretically create their own database in this information. Hypothetically speaking. Any questions about $1 Million Database? Any questions about anything that I've talked about thus far? Yes, sir.
Oh, thanks. With the information that is on all three sites, is it updated? Do the sites send out a notice, or is there a schedule of updating that information? Or is it only as good as the individual company has last reported their update?
Yes, and that's a good question. It depends on the company. I know for sure that ReferenceUSA contacts certain companies quarterly. It contacts other companies annually. Usually the larger companies quarterly, smaller companies annually. They've got a long process they go through. Sorkins publishes their new directories every year. I don't know how much the database is updated. And $1 Million Database is updated quarterly. They say quarterly, but they don't say specifically which companies are contacted quarterly. I'm assuming all of them, but again, with 1,330, maybe that's a dangerous assumption. Yes, ma'am.
To do searches on industry, how about if you have a job that could take you across industries, like a financial analyst or something like that, where you could do it many different types of companies? How do you do a search, or how do you use your databases, or which database should you go to, et cetera?
Good question. And that's the type of customer we're getting a lot more in our book librarian sessions. Is they'll come in, they're a salesperson. So the question I respond with is, what type of companies hire people with your skills? Once we can figure out individual companies, then we can do what we call reverse engineering, I showed you before, and use a target company, a company that you know is good for you, that does the type of work that you'd like to do. We can use that to create a list, but with what you're doing, you might want to create more than one list. You may have one list for a certain industry that you're going to be interviewing for, and then you may, especially if your skills are fairly diverse, create a second list for another industry. It'll be more work, but I would recommend creating separate lists with each of the databases. That way you can keep everything straight, keep your industries together, and that should help your searches. All right, let's look at a new database. This is going to be Hoovers. Now, sometimes when I tell people we have Hoovers at the St. Louis County Library, I get gasps like, wow, you have Hoovers. We paid 20 grand to have Hoovers at our company. I wish I would have known you had it for free. Well, now you know. So here is Hoovers. Now, like some of these D&B databases, we got a few hoops we have to jump through to get to where we can do our searches, but Hoovers is a little different from our previous databases. Whereas ReferenceUSA and Sorkins $1 Million Database as well were good for creating lists of companies within various criteria, Hoovers is better at taking individual companies that you found through the other databases and finding deeper information about them. So you may think of ReferenceUSA, Sorkins, $1 Million Database as the breadth. You find a lot of companies and a little bit of information. Hoovers is depth. You have a lot of information about a fewer amount of companies because Hoovers only looks at the top 20-25% of companies worldwide in terms of sales. And notice I said worldwide because Hoovers does look at foreign companies also, as well as American companies with foreign parents, because sometimes in ReferenceUSA, Sorkins, you don't get those. You would get them from $1 Million Database, though. Now, you'll notice Hoovers is also a D&B company, so it uses the same data source as $1 Million Database. Now, you can build a list over here on the left side. The downside to Hoovers, though, is you cannot export that list. You can't download it. That's why I recommend using Hoovers to search for large companies that you found through ReferenceUSA, Sorkins, $1 Million Database, but use Hoovers to get more information about those companies. So, somebody give me a large company, either a large company that we've looked at before or a large company that interests you. All right. Enterprise. And so it's this one right here, the British. Well, let's try Enterprise Group Holdings Limited. The reason why is we may be able to find the parent company through this, if they aren't the parent company. Let's see. So let's try it again. Enterprise Holdings Incorporated. Sometimes it takes us a little while to get there, but... So they actually have an ultimate parent, the Crawford Group. I've never heard of them myself, but now we know. First thing I want to show you is up here at the top. It says Enterprise Holdings Incorporated. This company is covered by Alexandra Biasada. This is the only database we have that lists the authors' names. So that'll give you kind of an impression of what Hoovers is about, is they actually have people who are tasked with covering these companies, and we know who they are. So on the left side, let's have a look at company description. View or read full description here. And the first thing you'll notice here is under description, this is not copied and pasted from the company's website. This is written by an author, somebody who knows how to write, presumably Alexandra. So you're not getting the company spin, basically. You're getting information that has been researched. And this information can be very useful in your interviews. In fact, I once had friend of mine who worked for a aerospace company and talked to her a little about it. And I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that your company laid off 10% of their workforce. That's a shame. And she said, how'd you know about that? Hoovers. A lot of information in this database. So that's just the company description. And you'll notice quite a bit more than what you get from the other databases. Here in the center, you'll find all of the financial information. So I'm going to scroll through here and show you what you see here. Here's your one-year employee growth. That might be a tip that certain companies are or are not hiring. Oh, yeah. I mean, you plug that into your GPS, and it'll take you right there. Or if you're using an iPhone, it'll take you to somewhere in Australia. Here's your competition. Top enterprise holdings competitors. We can view the full competitors list here. Kind of nice to know. Over here on the left side, I'm going to show you something else. Key people. I'm going to click View More People. So Hoovers knows 2,587 people who work for enterprise. Now, it starts off at the top. This is organized in hierarchical order. So we've got our chairman and CEO, Andrew C. Taylor. Let's find out about Andrew here. Tells us, gives us some contact info for him. He goes by Andy. Nice to know. Tells you where he used to work. Now, you won't get this level of information for everybody. Rule of thumb is the higher they are on the company structure, the more information you get from them. So if you're searching for somebody on the operational level, you likely will not get this level of information. But the fact that there is a list of 2,500 people lets you know that you will more likely find somebody on the operational level in Hoovers than you will for any of our previous databases. Now, let me show you how to do that. Over here on the left side, we've got refined by job title and then refined by job function. So we can scroll through here, and what sort of people do you want to find at enterprise? Marketing, okay, let's scroll down here. Let's see, marketing director, does that sound good? Marketing manager, yeah, let's get them in here. Marketing staff, maybe not. Marketing other. Marketing top level, definitely want to get them in here. And then we click Go right above there to refine our search to only these people. So we have the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer up here at the top. We've got a list of 27 people. I've always appreciated when the database defaulted to the largest group, so I don't have to mess around with this. I don't have a problem with scrolling. So here is more of the top-level manager types who work at enterprise. What do you think? Now again, Hoovers is very good for finding information about large companies. Doesn't matter whether they're public or private, as long as they're large. It doesn't do a very good job at all for finding smaller companies. So if you're looking for even medium-sized companies, you aren't going to find them here. Or if you do find them, what you get will be very limited in terms of information. Question?
How are you breaking it out by employees, revenue? What do you mean when you say a large company?
Sales. the top 20, 25% in the world by sales.
Paul, are those names also hyperlinked over there?
These are, yes. Now, I'm just going to click on this marketing manager to give an example of probably a more limited. Yeah, this is a lot more limited than we got from the CEO. You get a few colleagues, but you're not going to get her life story from conception to last week. Question over here.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
sir.
if this is the best database for large companies, is there one that's better for, let's just call it mom and pop type of businesses?
Mom and pop, best database there is going to be ReferenceUSA. They actually will have a lot of single sole practitioners, partnerships, things like that. Sorkins does a pretty decent job of that in St. Louis, and $1 Million Database also does smaller companies well. But first and foremost, I'd go ReferenceUSA on smaller companies. More questions about Hoovers? Hey, guys, ready for a new database? Okay. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to show you First Research. Now, when people ask me, what is your favorite database? It's kind of like asking me, what's your favorite child? Of course, to my knowledge, I have no children, so that question is probably irrelevant. But it's like asking maybe somebody with lots of kids who their favorite child is, because I use these databases all the time, and each of them have different things they do well. That's why I'm not up here showing you one database. But what I will often respond with is the most underappreciated database we have is called First Research. Now, First Research is a very different type of database than what we saw before. Now, it is a Dun & Bradstreet database, which is good, and that lets you know where the data comes from, but First Research is an industry database rather than a company database. So you're not going to look for Monsanto, for instance, in First Research. You're not going to type that into the box. We're going to look at industries rather than companies with First Research. Now, First Research was created for salespeople who need to make cold calls to companies. So what you're going to get here is not a company profile, but an industry profile, a very detailed industry profile. We're going to look at some of these profiles in just a moment, but keep in mind that First Research has about 700 industries that they look at. They're increasing those all the time. So if you're looking at something very niche-oriented, you may need to be a little broader when you're searching in First Research. So let's have a look at it. So I'm going to click Continue, and then Continue again, and then Submit on the side. Again, D&B likes to have you jump through a few hoops here, but finally we have our search box here in the middle. So somebody give me an industry. Chemical wholesale. Okay. Got to test the database here. I'm honestly a little surprised that chemical wholesalers is an option. So I'm going to click on chemical wholesalers and show you the profile here. Now, the first thing I want you to have a look at is in the upper right corner, look at the date. This is the date when this profile was updated. What is today, the 21st? This was updated yesterday. It's not something you'll see very often from databases. They will give you the exact updated date. Now, it's not always yesterday. This is updated usually every quarter, sometimes every 2 or 3 months. But they tend to update these profiles very, very often. And when you see the depth and the level of detail that you get in these profiles, you'll be impressed by the research that goes into creating these. So I'm going to click on Full Profile. This is what you want to do to read the full profile. One thing you'll notice, if you look in the far upper right, do you see how thin that little scroll bar is up there? That kind of gives you an idea of how long this is. And I'm not going to read through this whole thing for you, but what I will do is kind of scroll through here and hit some of the high points about a first research report. So we've got our industry overview here, competitive landscape, sales and marketing. And again, this is intended for salespeople, but think of this as somebody from the perspective of you're looking for a job in this industry. International insights. Human resources. This is what type of people does this industry hire? And you'll notice 2009, everybody got killed there. And then you've got your average earnings compared to the national average and what they pay. I would have expected this to be maybe a little higher than the national average, but still a little bit higher. Industry growth rating, medium. Your industry updates, industry indicators, industry forecast. This is great in an interview, being able to talk about where this industry is going. Tell you a true story. I had a customer, when I gave her this information, she asked me to marry her. I didn't accept the invitation, but we remained friends. That's how useful this can be. And think of this, again, if you're in sales, you have to prepare sales reports. How valuable could this be for preparing those types of reports? Sales forecasts. Industry drivers, critical issues, business challenges, business trends, opportunities. Executive insight. This is where First Research sits down with CEOs, CIOs, CFOs, HR people, salespeople, and they ask them, what are you seeing day in and day out in your industry and in your company? And this is another reason why it's industry rather than company-oriented, because most CEOs aren't going to just sit down and say, well, gosh, we're having all these kind of problems. But if it's kind of averaged over an industry, they'll be more willing to talk more. Executive conversation starters. Again, this is intended for salespeople, but these conversation starters are great interview questions. Questions that they might ask you, and questions that you can ask them. And just like your high school algebra book, you get the answers. Call prep questions. For those times during an interview when the conversation kind of grinds to a halt, and you're not sure, should I say something? Are they going to ask me something? Well, here's a conversation starter to re-engage the process. And just look at the level of detail. They go down to financial analysis, business and technology strategies, a lot of good questions here. And then the financial information. The farther we go down the page, the less of this I understand. Those of you who are in finance, you'll love this. Maybe you can explain it to me. Yeah. I've heard this is so easy a 5-year-old could do it. Problem is, there's never a 5-year-old around when you need one. Balance sheet. Yeah, when we get down to financial ratios, here's where it gets arcane. Again, those of you who understand this can appreciate it. Those of us who can't, industry websites, here we are. This I can understand. And then your glossary of acronyms. So this is a first research report. What do you think? Level of detail good enough for you? Don't you wish they had these for every company? Yeah. Trouble is, disclosure can be a difficult topic, but this is what First Research gives you. This is why I consider it to be the most underappreciated database we have. Now, this database will not help everybody, but if it has the industry that you need, this is a fantastic resource for learning about your industry and preparing for interviews. Yes, ma'am, you had a question.
Is this database and others available on our Android phones? I mean, can we get into the library? Or maybe that's already been asked.
Yes, you can access these through iPhones, Androids. I'd recommend you have really good eyesight and have a scrolling finger that scrolls pretty quick. But yes, if you do want to access them via smartphones, they can be accessed. Trouble is, you won't get a smartphone like an app version, meaning one that's created specifically for mobile. You'll have to use the actual site, which, like I said, will involve some scrolling. Yes, ma'am.
I see up there that you have the SIC codes. If you go into one of your other databases and see your company, get the SIC code from that, is there a way then to come into First Research and do a search on the SIC code?
Sure. In fact, you can type a SIC code inside the search box. So you could type the SIC code right here and get your code. More questions about First Research?
Can you try another one?
Sure.
Project management.
Ah, yes. What I'm seeing here is that it'll talk about industries that involve project management, but not project management as a separate industry. More questions about First Research? Okay, this ends the databases portion of my presentation. So does anybody have any final questions about databases? Anything at all? Okay, I'll show you something else we've got here. I'm going to come back to the library's homepage and show you the e-courses. This was something that the last time I presented to Go Network, I was surprised at the response to these, because we had just created them maybe, or we just bought these maybe a month before. But St. Louis County Library has a comprehensive collection of 6-week e-courses that you can use if you have one of our cards. And I'm going to show you how to access those. So we're at the library's homepage here, and I'm going to click on Events and Classes up here in the upper right. And then scroll down, and then over here on the left side, we've got e-courses. First thing to remember about e-courses, and this is a common mistake, is a lot of people forget to scroll down, because to take these e-courses, you have to have a passcode. One passcode for each class. So just fill out the information here that you need, submit, and then it will email you your passcodes. You can request up to 3 at a time, but you can take more than 3 classes simultaneously. You'll just have to request some more passcodes. So let's see what sort of classes we've got. Over here on the left side, does anyone see any of these subjects that look interesting to you? Law and legal. Anybody object? Overruled. So here we are. We've got business corporate, criminal law, general law, LSAT prep, and paralegal. What do you like? Paralegal. Now it says $0, so $0 assumes that you have a passcode. If you don't have a passcode, you'll need to get one because it'll try to charge you if you don't type in your passcode. Let's click on Explore a Career as a Paralegal. Shows also the start dates there. This will give you a course description, give your syllabus here. And this is what you'll do over your 6-week course. Instructor bio tells you who's going to be teaching you. Your requirements. Normally, any sort of reading material or coursework that they have for you is going to be electronic as well. So there'll be PDFs that you'll read, there may be websites that they'll direct you to that you're responsible for, and then there will be like question and answer sessions and message boards that you'll be expected to participate in to earn credit. There'll also be quizzes, those will be online as well. So they shouldn't refer you to anything that's outside of the E environment. Question, sir?
Yes, are all the courses geared towards exploring a career?
Not all of them. In fact, most of them are not. Most of them are questions like there's Microsoft, like the various Microsoft products, there's digital photography. So there are a lot of courses in here that really have little to do with finding a job.
Do any of them give certification at the end?
Yes, you do receive a certificate. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that it's unlikely these would be college credit, so to speak, that you could say, listen, I took this e-course from Ed to Go, here's my certificate, and take your best shot at whether the college would give you any credit for it. But these e-courses are great for doing what Ronnie mentioned earlier about answering that question, well, what have you been doing in the time that you've been unemployed? Well, here's a good way to learn some new skills in your time off. Jason.
Do you know if any of the credit you would get would go towards the continuing learning credits that you have to get if you're already certified as like a project manager or something like that?
Unlikely. Probably not, but it's definitely something to pursue because Ed2Go is not a fly-by-night operation. I mean, these professors, you could tell, this professor is the general counsel for a chemical company. So these aren't just your cousin Jimmy doing these courses. So they are highly regarded, but whether they be permissible or submittable to a continuing education, you definitely have to have a look at that. That is correct. Each course, you'll need a separate password, but you can take as many courses as you want. You'll just need a new passcode for each one of those courses. Estimated time for how long you spend on these courses, 20 to 25 hours a week. I'm sorry, 20 to 25 hours total. My mistake. Yeah, that'd be a little much, yeah. So yeah, you should be getting some kind of degree out of that. Further questions about courses?
Do they add new ones?
They do. Yeah, they're adding new ones all the time. Okay, does anyone have any final questions about anything that we've talked about? About the databases, about the e-courses? Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. I was asking you during the break about small or peripheral occupations or innovative new things that wouldn't really be covered. You talked about professional associations or something.
Yes.
Could you maybe briefly, for the group, go over that?
Sure.
You know, we're talking about, I'm in like herbal health education, bicycle advocacy, things that are, you know, cutting edge, but not in the core yet or conventional core. So, and you mentioned very good recommendations about the associations as another, you know, entry point.
Yes. Good question.
Is that, yeah.
We were talking about how do you find industries that don't have industries? Jobs that aren't part of the conventional industries that you get from a database. How do you search for them? And with the normal databases, that can be tough. What I recommend, though, is searching for a professional organization or association that governs these activities, that these small professions. And we have a database called the Encyclopedia of Associations. Call it the new, go back to slcl.org here, and this is a database I don't use a whole lot, but I do want to show it to you. It's called the Encyclopedia of Associations, or Associations Unlimited is the name of the database. So I go back to research, and I click on business and investing, and it's called Associations Unlimited. And as I said, this is good for finding professional organizations for, it doesn't even have to be industry-oriented. There are sports fan clubs that you can find in here. Now, of course, we're not going to have every sports fan club that's out there because there'd be millions of them. But this is a good way to find professional organizations, also a great way to network. Is find an association that governs the profession or the work that you do. Also, another quick and dirty way to find associations is just do a Google search. Just type it in bicycle, pedestrian, professional organization, and see what you get. More questions about anything that we've talked about? Okay, like to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for inviting me to your organization. I hope that these databases prove useful to you in your career transition. And I encourage you to give us a call. I've got plenty of cards here. Give us a call and book a librarian. We'll sit down with you for a half hour and show you how these databases work with your type of industry. Thanks again for having me out.